Who just came out of the rain? It's not loud enough? How's that? My former radio days. Good morning.
Hi, John.
My name is John Peterson. I work for the Department of Homeland Security, Office of Emergency Communications. Within OEC, we have a branch called the ICTAP branch that watches over most of the communications training some of you have had. The courses we put on are, well, it grows almost daily, it seems. But the most notable are the communication leader courses, the communication technician courses, the OXCOM courses, RADO, incident tactical dispatcher, incident communication manager, and we have a lot more coming down the road. Unfortunately, some of us speak OECEs, which means we talk in abbreviations most of the time, because if we had to talk the whole word out, our day would be much longer. So what I'd like to do real quick is, how many people here have taken the COML course? Thank you. The COMT course. The OXCOM course? Whoa. Okay, thank you. Again, we're the technical assistance branch for OEC. We support our stakeholders, which is mainly each of the states, the 56 states and territories. We do SOPs, exercises, and a myriad of things we do. We develop tactical, interoperable communication plans. These are so hard sometimes. Too many words. And then we do statewide communication interoperability plans. Again, our stakeholders are mainly the SWCs, which are statewide interoperability communication managers. Our national priorities vary from year to year. This year it's commu planning. And what are the other ones that we got going for the states? Carla? FirstNet is another big deal we're briefing on. We're just now getting ready to revamp the courses, to update those in conjunction with FEMA. So we have a lot of things going on. Those that remember the old days of public safety tools, it has gone bye-bye. Now all the information you need to look things up are through these two websites. So if you got your camera and you want to take a picture of that, I'll wait a second. Okay? And we can tell you what the websites are again later. This is a summary of training that we've done since October through 1 May. We seem to always be in competition with COMT, which is COMT is actually the most requested course, followed immediately by OXCOM. Overall, these are the total numbers that we've trained since the beginning of time, which in our lifetime is 2007. Right now, OXCOM is at 2,300. Some of the things we're doing in 2018, we are now developing applications for your smartphones. You already know we have the e-NIFOG. We already know, or maybe you don't know, the OXFOG is now in the app stores for Droid only right now. We have submitted it for the Apple Store, but Apple seems to keep changing the rules on us. It will eventually be on the Apple Store, but right now, today, you can download it. We've also worked on several state fogs. We're working on California right now, West Virginia on the legal side of things we're working on, and we have completed the state of Kansas. The other things we do, like I said, is commune curriculums. We're getting away. Carla, you got the jar? There's a little private joke going on. You probably already know that all these classes I've told you about fall under the heading of communication units, also known as ComU. That is changing, folks. It's going to be communication section. And when that happens, no longer will we fall under logistics. We'll be side by side. And we'll be officially part of that command structure. There's more secrets to that diagram, but I'll hold off. We've got two briefers with us today. Of course, the two most notable events in 2017 was Hurricane Harvey going into the state of Texas. Also, Hurricane Maria, which devastated Puerto Rico. Our first briefer is the Deputy SWIC for the state of Texas, who will give you an overview of what was done communication-wise during that hurricane to include what Oxcom was all about during that hurricane. Carla?
All right, everybody hear me? Okay, good. So, yeah, we had a little friend come into Texas last August. I guess the best way to describe this friend is that he wouldn't leave. So at the peak intensity near landfall, it's up on the chart, and you can kind of see the predicted track. He stayed 7 days, made landfall 3 times. So just kind of a day-by-day, just general idea of what happened in Texas. Wednesday, August 23rd, was Tropical Storm Harvey. Governor Abbott declared 30 counties for a state of emergency and mandatory evacuations. So this was the spaghetti model as of Wednesday, so we still didn't really know where it was going to go. Then on Friday, it was a 130-mile-an-hour Category 4 hurricane. Pre-10 a.m., of course, everything's wonderful. Everything's working the way it should. We did do some requests to, get things, pre-deployed and staged. We in Texas, we can't just call it a ICS 213. We got to have our own name for it. It's called a STAR request, but that's what it is. So we can't just follow the rules. We have to change it. But anyway, they activated the DERS reporting system, which FEMA provides, which gives you the state of PSAPs and as well as commercial carriers. So we're getting all of this turned up and getting ready to go. We have in Texas, we have what we call a communications coordination group. This is legislatively mandated. It's where all of the carriers, all of the amateur radio operators, public safety agencies, at the state level, so DPS, the Department of Transportation, military department, all of those are housed in one room so that we can do our coordination efforts together. This year, I guess it was probably day 2, the FCC and NTIA actually brought personnel in. And they're always available by phone if we need them, but they actually came and were in the room with us. So I know in one instance, Louisiana was bringing some assets in to the Beaumont area, and the FCC guy had an STA within 5 minutes for them to be able to operate their equipment. So that was an extremely beneficial thing that we have. So once again, that was activated on the 26th, and these are the agencies and commercial carriers that were there. Some of the other things that were invaluable to us this year were some of our GIS tools. We did a tracker where we kept track of where we had everything deployed. We had this little app called drivetexas.org. It was viewed 5 million times during Harvey, including our department. As we had to move assets as the storm moved east, how do I get this trailer from Katy, Texas to Beaumont, Texas? And we had to use all those road closure notifications. It was an invaluable tool. Another thing that TDM put together was, which is our Department of Emergency Management, they put together a water inundation prediction map so that between that and the Drive Texas, you could really see where you were going to be able to get through and where the problem areas were. In the Houston area, we have a huge, very well-developed LMR trunked radio system for public safety. And all of the colored areas, tie into that radio system. So it's that was a big benefit because, well, I'll kind of get into, we had two different types of storms with Harvey. We had the hurricane and then we had flooding. So those have two different responses. And so during the storm, these are the number of 911 call center PSAPs that were affected. So it peaked on the 28th with 11, but then by 2 or 3 days later, we had all of the 911 centers were back up. Some of them were on generators, but they were back functioning. Cell sites, actually, because most of the state was a flooding event and not a hurricane event, we didn't really have a huge impact on the cell site outage. Most of that was concentrated down in the Rockport, Texas area where the hurricane actually hit. This is our STAR requests, which is how we get our requests for communications equipment to come in and help back up someone. And once again, those peaked on the 26th and tapered off quite rapidly because of the type of storm we ended up with. So the hurricane actually hit in Corpus Christi and Victoria areas, kind of in between those. 130-mile-an-hour winds, approximately 15,000 homes were destroyed. So this was those were very, medium-sized communities. Corpus is a fairly large city, but not to the scale of if the storm had actually hit in Houston. So definitely a lot of devastation in that area. City of Rockport and the Department of Transportation both lost their towers. And then the storm kind of morphed into just a massive rain event. So the Fayette, Wharton, and Colorado counties are on the Colorado River. So this is straight up from Rockport and Victoria towards Austin. So the flooding on Sunday was already clear up into the Austin area. I particularly like the picture down in this corner where the water is up to the side rail of the highway. In Houston, it was record rainfall. More than 203,000 homes were flooded and 30,000 water rescues that we know of, because if a neighbor had a boat, they were out rescuing people, and some of those we didn't capture in our head count, but it was a massive flooding event in Houston. So the National Weather Service had to make some changes as well. They had to change their rain gauge on their graphics because it didn't show the amount of rain that we got. So that was not necessarily a good thing to be famous for. We had record rainfall, 54 inches in southwest Houston and 60.5 inches in Beaumont in 4 days. So, and one of the, I think, kind of telling things is one of the quotes from David Novak with the National Weather Service. He had made a statement that, it was going to be, the breadth and intensity of this rainfall is beyond anything experienced. He said he would also add the word, and the duration is beyond anything we've experienced. So it was definitely not a good day when you set the measured rainfall record for the continental United States. So. And then there's the question of what do you do with over 500,000 flooded vehicles? So luckily, the Texas World Speedway offered their facility, and I think the final count was probably 700,000 cars were stored there to be processed by insurance companies and probably brought up here to be sold as used cars. So hopefully you know the signs to look for. Another area that got hit was the Fort Bend and Brazoria County areas, which is southwest of Houston. The Brazos River and San Bernard Rivers actually merged together for a short period of time. They were so over flooded. The Conroe area, which is north of Houston, also Lake Conroe had to, water was going over the spillway. They had to start releases from that. Beaumont and Port Arthur. This was later on in the week with the Harvey that just won't die. And I really love the two pictures at the top there, which is the same spot on Interstate 10 before and after. It looks like you're out in the Gulf of Mexico and you're actually on the interstate. So once again, it's the storm that just would not leave Texas. We're friendly, but you can move on. So Hurricane Harvey had varied effects on communications in Texas. Because of Houston mainly just being a flooding event, we had amateur radio active in the EOC for the county and also for the city of Houston, but the radio system for public safety pretty much handled what they needed to do. I think they had 4 days where they had 1.4 million push-to-talks on the radio system, so it was pushed to the limit, but it met their expectations. One of the main places that we did use amateur radio was in Houston. We had mega shelters. Everybody sets up a shelter, but we had 2 very large ones at the convention center and at NRG Stadium, which is where the Texans play. There's some, and that's also where the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is held, so there's several buildings there. So we had 2 very large mega shelters there, and amateur radio provided a lot of support there. And as I mentioned earlier, the cell system outages were relatively small and relatively short, so that wasn't really a factor for us this year. Oxcom in Texas, we've been having classes study since 2014, I think was our first class. I had a note here to add the Midland class because we just had it a couple of weeks ago, so there's another 27 folks that have been trained in Texas. So the way that Texas does our emergency management, we have disaster districts, and I believe there's 32 of those, and each of those districts, we still use the RACES system in Texas, and they have a RACES official at each of those disaster districts, and so they handle, star requests that come in and out of those disaster districts. But amateur radio was used to support 20 disaster districts, counties, and cities. Some of the tasks performed were the communications coordination group support, many HF nets, RACES nets, local nets, Gulf Coast stations, Harris County specifically, and then also doing just some general radio maintenance as requested for folks. We used over 45 personnel, over 1,000 hours of service were provided, and 11 modes of communication were used. In Harris County specifically, they had 72 Oxcom operators in the county. Many were deployed both as Oxcom and Aries. They were activated for 14 days, all shifts, so they had got to use their go kits. Over 200 hams were activated. Crews took field reports, entered information into Web EOC, which is what our State Operations Center uses. At one time, there were 35 hams reporting on road conditions. looking for areas that had flooded and needed assistance. We have a very active Mars community in Texas. They provided a lot of communications on over towards the east in Beaumont. And they had 9 members deployed across the state and did a total of 58 WinLink messages. And they mainly support our Texas military department. Used to be called something else. So, and this is just kind of a statement from the DHS Coordinating Center. It's not so much the depth and experience that an individual has, but the breadth of experience that makes amateur radio operators invaluable. And so we do believe that, and we totally support getting all that going. So I'll turn it over.
Before we go on to our next speaker, I'd like to enter the 3 days before Dayton. We conducted an Oxcom class at the Beaver Creek Fire Department. Are any of those students here today? Please stand up. Thank you. We had a total of 27 people in the class. 2 of our instructors that taught that class are Randy Kerr and Tom Bachman. If you would stand up. And one of our other instructors who's kind of strayed in between classes, his name is Jason Matthews. He's from down in Florida. Jason? So if you take any of the OEC classes that are spread throughout the country, at some point you're going to meet those individuals because they seem to be every place. One other group I'd like to acknowledge, if anybody is here, the infamous Force of 50. Is any of those people here today? No. Anyway, we appreciate what they did for the territory of Puerto Rico, and we have learned from that ourselves up at OEC, and we will take some of those lessons learned when we do future curriculum. Our next speaker is Dr. Oscar Resto. He's a section manager down in Puerto Rico. He was the head ham, so to speak, when Puerto Rico got hit, and he's here today to brief what the amateur radio community did down there. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. And my name is Oscar. Please call me Oscar. Doesn't matter where you meet me. Either at the university, my student call me Oscar. Simple as that. As you can see, and we have this impact into Puerto Rico, and we have to take care of the communications as it went through, and I'm going to go in details. On September 20, the Hurricane Maria impacted Puerto Rico, entering actually from the southeast part of Puerto Rico, getting out 50 miles west of Arecibo as a Category 2, but it enters as a Category 5. More than 50 direct fatalities related to the hurricane. But in reality, until now, we are running into today's about 1,200 indirect second wave. And that thing, we have to talk about it because there are several reasons for it, and we have to be aware of those second wave. Micro business shut down, and we're going to go in detail, and the government service was completely dislocated. And this is something that you have to be aware. There are reasons for that. And there are no excuses, but there are reasons that it happens. This is the first time that we have a real field day. 100% power outage. 98% of communications of all kinds down. Only satellite dish from hotels with Wi-Fi phones available in the metropolitan area. 1 or 2 cell sites from XY company. To the point that everybody else and students were depressed, kids were depressed because they didn't have Facebook for more than 6 weeks. And we're talking serious business now. Many roads blocked, 18 main bridges down. There are small bridges per town that they were down as well. Food and fuel chain was completely dislocated for weeks. Hospital were running without communications. You know that hospital love to have a zero inventory. They need a special medicine. They order it today, and tomorrow is here or within hours. So they have to go via internet to the warehouses and deliver the medicines, whatever the needs, because they don't want to have a warehouse. Things get spoiled, or they don't want to have money standing there for nothing. So imagine this situation of no comms, and what about the service that you're going to give? Personally, it took me 3 days to get out of my house. I was working with my son with chainsaw and my Jeep with a winch and cutting trees and pulling out trees out of the way. And at the same time waiting for these 3 days that the water resides back to 1 feet so I can go across the last path. Thank you for the house, didn't happen much. But what went wrong? As I said, 100% of the grid of the power was down. The main grid was really hurt. The distribution grid was badly hurt. Not enough worker trucks, materials of repair. Distribution grid was severe damage. The whole fuel system, gasoline, diesel, water, tap water, gone. Not even water bottle because they were bought before the hurricane, so the warehouses were closed, so no more. What you have in stock, that's what you have. Then we have what you expected to have in such a field day. Security problems. Martial law was implemented from 6 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock a.m. Of course, with our IDs, we were on the road. I don't know why, but we were there. The blue flu, police was absent. Why? Because everybody is impacted. They have to take care of their family. They have no gasoline, they have no fuel, they have no generators, they have no cell sites or cell phones. They don't have even money to buy whatever resources they needed. Patrol vehicles were not functional because we can talk about floodings of all kinds. Limited dispatch capability because the police department system was, as I told you, completely down. Due to desperation, looting, vandalism, riots, carjacking were reported. Why the carjacking? Because if you're driving or a female is driving a car, she's handling in her pocket, in her wallet, $300 to $500 in cash. This car is full of fuel, and she may have even food. So they were not looking for the car. They were looking for the needs of their family. It's not an excuse, but this is what happens when such a field day happens. Driving conditions, the best thing about it, there were no traffic lights. And I usually say I love hurricanes, and people from the force of 50 heard me say that many times. No street illumination, blocked roads, and 18 bridges down, and we said that. And I talk about the fuel chain distribution, we talk about the fuel, the driving condition, the blocked road, and tap water not available in any house. So whatever you saved before the hurricane, that's what you have for drinking. Thank God. Puerto Rico, it looks like Dayton, Ohio. It rains. But remember that after a hurricane, you have a dry season for about 2 weeks. And this is expected because the rain goes with the hurricane after the hurricane. Communication failure. You never seen such a thing. About a week later, a few cell sites, they were being able to get it back and running. So wherever that cell site was up, the traffic, the highway was congested, people went out of the car, tried to get, believe it or not, Facebook. They want to send a message of what happened in Puerto Rico through Facebook. But then it was limited. Immediately after by G2, who has a flip phone? That will work. An Android or an iPhone would not work as well as a flip phone because it's on G2 and text messages. And that stands there for about 8 weeks. And we have people from the chairs operators here, and he has that experience, even traveling across the island. TV and radio station. One TV channel survived for months. One channel. In the auxiliary antenna, low power, and one single radio station for about 2.5 months, an AM radio station. The EMS radio station fell immediately. So no messages that was able to be transferred to the public. Even the access to the station by the roadblocks, by trees, by collapse of the mountains, by the bridges, was inaccessible. The only way to get to and we'll talk later on, was by helicopter and special forces, military police, and the EFS2 getting access by air. That was the only way to get over there. NOAA station, I don't want to talk about details. Immediately before the hurricane, once the winds start coming up, it was out of the air. So we will talk about intercommunication and the power authority, and we will go into this unbelievable net, completely resilient, bulletproof, but not hurricane-proof. Completely down, destroyed, all the way to the ground. The shelters, all wet inside. Generators didn't start or even stolen afterwards, after the hurricane. So people think, oh, we go to Puerto Rico, 35 by 100, easy. We go to the high hill, put a repeater, and we have communications. This is the minimum communication that the government needs to have communication in the island. What about when all of them, they are destroyed? What about when a big dish drops down and goes to the roof of the shelter, and now you have all the equipment completely wet? So the 85th of the Armed Forces, tower climbers, they have to go carefully into it because they were booby-trapped, those towers, whatever was still standing, endangered stuff. Hospitals, we would do things for them, but we have, talking about hospitals, we're in critical infrastructure status. Hospitals were flooded, rooms were damaged, water into the emergency rooms and also the rooms of patients, fungus, all of this because no electricity. Relying primary generators, some without backup, and the diesel distribution completely disappears. So whatever you have in the tank, that's your reserve, nothing more. Senior care facility, you have to be careful with that. Without electricity and no power, water, that increased the problem into the senior citizens. Some centers reported that the diesel generators and water were stolen, worsening the condition, and patients die. And I can get you to meet the person that her grandfather died just because it was dehydrated, because they stole the tap water on the cistern. In some cases, the administration was taking care of the family, not able to go to work as well. And this is a real catastrophe. Dialysis treatment, not able to coordinate with the patients. So you know how it works? The drivers that they were able to go back and have enough fuel, go and visit those patients and pick them up because they were not able. You need dialysis? Of course they need dialysis. They have been 3 days without dialysis. What happened when it goes into the 4th day? They give you dialysis, they have to give you a very extensive treatment because probably you will make it. That is a cutoff day. It's a question of death and life. Hospital communications, unable to access patient information, medical supplies, water, power, and I said all those things. More than 300 hospitals were actually closed, sending everybody to the medical centers of the region. So they were dumping the patients. They were not able to open. Education system. For 2 months, the education system from pre-kinder to university was completely collapsed. We went back to the university and the education system and the students, they were taking class without water and electricity. In some areas at that time, we got water and some water, so they have a full day. Electricity, not needed. The university, I gave class on the halls, and because I gave a class that started at 5 o'clock in the evening, I have to do it on Saturdays at 9 o'clock during daylight for 4 hours. Without electricity, neither water. Banking system. Can you imagine that you walk out of the Hamvention with the money that you have in your pocket, and I tell you that you will not have money for the next month? Maybe because he's going to buy a flex radio, and he came with that cash, he will survive. Because he decided not to buy the radio. Then it comes the unbelievable. What about VSAT and satellite telephones? When you have 2,000 satellite telephone in a footprint on the island of about 25 satellite connections, what is the use of a satellite telephone? And then on top of it, many people who come responded, they have the guest card with priority, but it had nothing to do with that. Simply, the satellite was congested. The same thing as VSAT. The VSAT, on the third day, it was working very well in the Red Cross because we were the only one. On the fifth day, there were about 5. On day number 7, there were about 10. And then you know what happened with the signal? Simply the bandwidth reduced to the point that it didn't work. So they always working with FCC and the federal agency to increase the bandwidth into the island, but that takes some time to align those satellites properly. Delivery delays. From 7,000 trailers, FEMA was able, by knowing the manifest, to extract them with the armed forces from the port. But 5,400 trailers were not able to deliver. So now you can imagine, again, the food chain, having food getting rotten right there in port, but the drivers didn't have diesel for the trucks. The drivers were having problems with their family. They were not coming to work. So now you have a whole society system structure completely dislocated. I tell you, this is a great field day. Many of the local amateurs were injured. Their towers were down, antennas are broken, lack of commercial power, limited amount of generators. Normally when you think about a generator, you think that you're going to run a generator 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 days. I run the generator in my house for 144 days, from September 20 to February 4th. And I still have blackouts, like twice every week, and one of them, every 2 weeks, I can have a day off completely. Talking about the financial circumstances, and I think I will go with the banking soon. So we have a catastrophic need for everything. I can show you all time of poles and broken things. What about people looking for food into the McDonald's or whatever, and they are closed? Supermarkets are closed. And the lines for the stations that start to open up a week later for the gas stations, 200 people that they are allowed to have 5 gallons of gasoline, and 500 cars making a 12-hour line to get 5 gallons of gasoline. That's my station, what is left out of it. I still have the tower. So I wrote a letter to the American Radio Relay League. And you know what I asked for it? Make a guess. We need everything. And for the very first time, the American Radio Relay League, they talked together and they decided to make a partnership with the American Red Cross, and they deployed. The force of 50, there were over 150, and I confirmed that number, volunteers. But you know how many they fit into the plane? 22, with 500 pounds of equipment with them. Because it's not only bringing the people, you have to bring the right equipment. So in that charter airplane, they were only fit 22 because everybody has the same priority, relief operation. And the Red Cross was willing to bring those guys into Puerto Rico. We had a wonderful partnership with the American Red Cross because we signed a memo of understanding on March, and we had the greatest hurricane on September 20. What went right? So, because of the Power Authority lost all communications, we were called to serve with them. So we put in the main center control of the Power Authority a base station with 300 watts amplifier, and we were able to have about 130, 135 amateurs in the technical plazas supporting the infrastructure that they didn't have any communications at all. And actually, by listening to the drivers and the requests and what they reported, we make an assessment of Puerto Rico. I was in the Red Cross, and we were listening, and I came to the Red Cross. They said this road was closed, closed. And we start to understand how was the extension of the impact. And this is very important. We had no repeater for about 6 weeks. then 13 up, repeaters start to come on, 1, 2, then 2, 3 more, then 13 stays for about 6 months on the air. And one of my assistant section emergency coordinator, he's an engineer that his task as a RS member is to go up into the hills and fix the repeater, put them to work. So that is important as any RS member. We got the Juncker repeater at last working, and it's beautiful working over there, thanks to the Homeland Security people. And from this information that we got from the PREPA, Power Authority System, we generated an assessment map. And this map contains the technical plazas that they are over the whole island. They are in yellow and magenta. And we were tracking block, broken bridge, slides on the mountains. And then was the first meeting on day number 4 from FEMA, and the Red Cross was invited. So on the meeting, they say, we need to make an assessment. We have no information about what's going on into Puerto Rico. And this one already included Vieques and Culebras, that they were directly impacted by Irma and by Maria. And from then, they presented this map. How can you have such an important information already? He said, well, there's a guy named Oscar. He's an ARES member. He's a ham. And they have already established communication in all those dots across the island, specifically on the 23 technical plazas, because then we have eyes on the roads and ears. The drivers, they like to talk, and they were reporting to Monacillo Control. We later on make a deal, and we got invited to work with very pristine people from the FEMA, and I will talk about that. And we were invited to dance in the ballroom. I heard those words. And we have to dance correctly, and we have to dance the right way. Be respectful. Don't be ham radio, arrogant operators, and I have to say that. But we have to serve the clients, our people. Doesn't matter it's Florida, doesn't matter it's Ohio, doesn't matter it's Texas, we have to attend that emergency. And many stations help us from the states, okay? That's no doubt about that. So we make a deal that allows, by sending one operator, sacrificing one operator into the main firehouse headquarters, that it actually is the same warehouse of FEMA, as having communication directly from the EOC at that time into this warehouse. And they allow us to have access to every fire station for the Red Cross and the hams, that force of 50 who were there. And this is the way we distribute it. Instead of sending teams of 2, we were able to drive a minivan and deliver one person to his firehouse because he's in a safe haven. And this is something that you better know, that you can use in practice. Because then the firemen, they are runners, and they know the politician, they know the culture, and they will bring the information that you have to transmit back into whatever there are the needs. So this is the official FEMA map, and these are the actual operating stations. Those are the green dots, because they are active. The other dots, that was the planning development on Hands on the Hill to bring up the communications. So we make, with the American Red Cross support, develop an incident map, radio message citizens for emergency requests, and we were supporting most of it, these emergency messages of all kind of hospital and any reunification that it was outbound. Inbound comes in, how can you go out of the street with roadblocks and try to deliver that inbound? You know that is very difficult, so we have to make critical decisions on that for the solutions of your non-solution exercises. And as a technology advisor, because we are MacGyvers, right? So we serve as technology. Hospital communications, And let me give you this example. If a hospital needs diesel, and we requested it to FEMA in the morning, in an hour and a half, 1,000 gallons of diesel was going to be delivered by helicopters. If they need generators, and they're running out of the second generator, they will get 2 emergency generators of 1 megawatt. So these are things that harms our traffic became important. They believe on us because they were able to go there. How I'm doing my time. This is a evacuation note, and it's longer than that because our 6 patients with the code, and immediately after 5 minutes of request the evacuation because of Hospital Menonita in Caguas has both generators fails from the intensive care unit. Let's see if it comes. Sorry. 2 Black Hawks arrive in 5 minutes. And that is really good response from the response agency. And took those 6 patients and transferred it directly to the comfort. And this is support, okay? And we need to be able to handle that kind of situation properly. This is in the Oaxaca Dam. And there's a large joke about this picture, but I cannot say it in public. Let's see if this one shows. I should have put my computer. This operator from the Force of 50, he's a Master Sergeant in Special Forces, retired. And he was able to, instead of destroying the dam, to save it. He looked for the weakest point, and he was controlling the helicopter to drop sandbags and concrete blocks to restrain, sort of hold the dam and save the water for 350,000 houses. So there are heroes over there. And if you meet him, his name is Andy. Right now he's KP4 Alpha Alpha November because he moved to Puerto Rico and married the engineer in charge of the dam of Oaxaca. Tell him that he's the legend and he will come and kill me. The convention center. This is something interesting because how many people you think were supporting Puerto Rico during the first, arrived there within the first 3 weeks? Like that. You know how many? 7,000 Homeland Security and FEMA personnel were there. And it became the GFO. These are official pictures that I can use, okay? And we have 3 ballrooms like that, and I have a witness here, and they were all full, crowded, people working from 7 o'clock in the morning up to 10 o'clock in the evening. And then we have the first floor, the House of Representatives and the Senate of Puerto Rico, the second floor, the state government. I will not talk about them. And then FEMA level. And they were working, preparing food, an emergency food for 3.2 million people. This is a real business now. I told you this is a great field day. And then we can talk about the best antennas, and I recommend you to practice and make it work and copy every station from 2 miles to 100 miles. And the gentleman over here is one of the chairs operator who was training even the armed forces how to make the NBIS antennas. And this is very important, because you have to communicate within 25 miles. Not only ground wave propagation, you have to communicate 50 miles, you have to communicate 75 miles. And then the repeaters, without no repeaters, that doesn't work. So you have to do it in HF. Voice and data. And I encourage you to utilize this technology and develop your skill, because it depends very strongly also on the conductivity of the ground. So you have to work at 8 feet, 10, 12, 14, 16 feet to get the best signals to be transferred within the area impacted. And then you have to communicate maybe away of the region impacted, that it could be over 200 miles. So this is the explanation of it. I don't want to go into the whole theory. I think that we can contact each other. We can go to the section emergency coordinator, get these classes, but I encourage you to do it and get prepared, because if you have to install a 40, 80 meter antenna, 10, 15 feet of height, you can do that everywhere. You have to climb high towers and things like that. And I love that drawing. One person did it, it's by hand, and you have the right numbers. And remember, we can share information with shares in 60 meters. So you can talk directly from the ham radio bands into the Department of Defense band and transfer information most needed with using the right channels. Depends on the region 1 and 2 in the case of Puerto Rico Voice and DARA. And utilize, and I encourage you be able to utilize DARA, because a message from the hospital with 50 lists of medicine and exactly what is needed, you get a text file, put it into the HF mail or VHF mail, depends how you do it, and send that. Don't transfer it by hand. You are, and you don't. We don't make decisions. We are not decision makers on the politics. If a mayor requests something, we just transfer the information. That's it. Even if we can have opinion, remember we're also victims on the same region. Questions, gentlemen? Thank you very much.
Oh, you still have more slides.
No, those are extras. If they have questions, those were extras.
We'll have to come back to those. Wow. We asked Oscar to come to this because we knew he had stories. And our regional coordinators who worked with him said he's extremely good. And this is the first time I've seen that. So, wow. We're going to be working closely with the Territory of Puerto Rico as far as communication training. They've already got a request in for an Oxcom class, and I'm sure there'll be other classes we'll be helping with them as well. Oxcom. We had the 3-day class. What is Oxcom? Basically, it's not a ham radio course. It's a NIMS ICS course. It tells how the amateur radio community will work with NIMS ICS personnel during an event. Auxiliary communications has been around since the Titanic. We've been effective forever. When I came to OEC in 2009, I said we need some training in amateur radio for emergency communications. And they go, well, we have the ARRL, and ARRL is great, and they do a lot of emergency communication training. So we took a slight twist to it, because we knew our stakeholders were more involved with public safety. So thus, we did the NIMS ICS twist to amateur radio communications. Again, we developed the course initially in 2009. The first course was in the state of Nebraska, December of 2009. And it involves first of all, it's not a group, okay? It's a training philosophy involving Mars, Aries, Races, and anything else you can think of. It's everybody working together. One of the things we did for the Oxcom course, we asked the students not to wear any name tags, not to wear any hats with call signs, nothing that would indicate they were a ham operator whatsoever. Because when they came together on the exercises, we did not want the Races to go over here and the Aries going over here. We actually forced them into exercises working together. It was irrelevant where they came from, just together. And the exercise he was talking about earlier during our classes, the final exercise is something we've stole off of Star Trek, the Kobayashi Maru. Basically, we sat for a very long time to come up with an exercise that had no resolve, because it wasn't important to get an answer. It was important to see how these various people work together. And that's what the exercise is all about. Normally we teach it in 2 days because people like to have it on the weekends, so we fly out and we do it two 10-hour days for the course. On special occasions like Dayton, we do the 3-day version, and we do occasionally get requests for that. I'd say 95% of all states and territories right now have some form of amateur radio communications in their EOCs. That's up, well, it was around 50% when I first showed up. So between ARIES, RACES, shares, we've actually come into our own. The emergency managers are more accepting, they understand better, and that's really the ultimate goal. Okay, so I don't know why I got it titled Oxcom Curriculum Updates, because I'm involved more than that. We have new courses coming online, and I think I have a slide in here for the Information Technology Service Leader course. And I slow down so Carla can nod, make sure I'm saying it right. We know that since ComL first came out, probably around, 2007? That there has been massive technology changes. Bluetooth, WAN, LAN, all those good things. Our current ComL course is an excellent course, but it needs to do better with new technology. Sometime in the next 12 months, we hope that the new ComL course, ComL 2.0, will be ready to deploy. FEMA EMI is sitting at the same table with OEC to create this course. Once ComL is done, we immediately go to ComT. We update technology in that as well. Immediately after that comes Oxcom, and so on and so forth. Is the intent, although I think it's rather ambitious, every 3 years we update these courses, just because of the technology changes. Also, we expect NIMS ICS changes. We pull our data from the NQS, National Qualification System, NIMS, of course. We have subject matter experts. I'd hate to think, I should do that one day, Randy. Think of all the expertise years we have with our instructors. I mean, Randy's been around since Methuselah. I mean, 30, 40 years, right? Expertise, Randy? 30-something. So these people are no slouches. We take great pride in the quality of the instructors that teach for us. We know there's also going to be more rules, FCC rules and changes. And of course, believe it or not, when we get an email that says, why don't you think about changing this, whether it's ComL, ComT, or Oxcom, we actually take that email and we put it in a file folder. Now what do? When it comes time to update the curriculum, we take all those emails and we spread them out and see if there's a common thread. We don't throw them away. Now it may take a couple years, but we eventually get to those recommendations. I foresee Oxcom of the future still maintaining its NIMS ICS. Again, it's stakeholder driven, but based on what we've been experiencing over the last few years, looking more in the philosophy of deployment. The Force of 50, shining example. Shares, shining example. We need to take advantage of that and train like that. Not weekly nets or something like that. We're talking USAR style training, which takes it to another level. When we get to that point, shares, ARRL, OEC, Mars, hopefully we'll all sit down at the table and discuss that so we all have a common path forward. The OxFOG, this is our field operations guide. Most people know about it. Again, it's now available on Google Play. It's not yet available unless Randy checks right this second. But Apple seems to change its rules periodically. So you can submit it, and 3 days later they change the rules, and you got to go back and resubmit it. And no, we're working on it. It's also online on the SafeCom website. On the SafeCom website, there's also a training calendar if you're interested in taking ComL training, ComT training, OxCom training. It gives you dates, and if in doubt or you wanted me to check a specific area or dates for you, just drop me an email. Contact information will be at the very end, and I will let you know what kind of training is up in your particular area. 30 slots per class. Usually we sell those out. Well, I shouldn't say the word sell. They're free. You just have to show up. We do have prerequisites. You must take the most current prerequisites in ICS 100B, 200B, 700A, and 800C, which are the current ones, plus have an active amateur radio license. State-sponsored OxCom course. We've had such an influx of requests for OxCom, we do not have enough instructors to teach it. So now we are doing the Train the Trainer down at the States. What's a Train the Trainer? State-sponsored OxCom. We do also have state-sponsored ComL, state-sponsored ComT, so anything I'm about to say generically is the same. The instructors for those classes at the state level must meet the same requirements that OEC requires of its contractors. Exactly the same. You must be able to prove you've had experience. Prove that you've had some kind of sit-down instruction at an educational unit to receive instruction on how to be a teacher. ICS 100, 2, 7, 8, and the list is pretty depth. It's not for the weak of heart. And we do that because we want the best instructors out there. Now, another thing that is more than likely down the road going to change, all these ICS courses and prerequisites that you're used to taking and you think they're going to last every single day for the next 200 years, those options are gone. Both FEMA and OEC are coming up to a point where they will say, after X amount of years, you must renew if you want to maintain that certificate. And right now it looks about every 5 years. But that's not set in stone yet. FEMA and OEC work extremely close together. ComU 2.0, this is the fun stuff. All of our ComU classes, correction. Where's that jar? All of our communication section classes now are driven by the experts of SafeCom and our stakeholders at the state level. They are going after the Holy Grail, which would put the communication section on the map equal to the logistics section and all those other section chiefs. No more would we hide underneath logistics. It's kind of like the military having a J6. Battalion levels S6. I don't remember. Been a long time since I've been in the military. I'm something like that. Okay. Let me get to the diagrams. Again, these are the reasons why we're headed in that particular direction. I guess the latest draft of the ITSL course has been approved. Alpha course will be taught next month. Beta course will be taught in Houston in July. And assuming all goes well, then we'll probably have that out in the field late fall, October. Take that course. These are free courses, by the way. Digital, new technology. That's why we're doing these things. That's why we're updating everything. Yet we'll still be keeping LMR, land mobile radio, because we don't see a lot of places leaving that and going to FirstNet anytime soon. FirstNet is considered the 800-pound gorilla in the room, by the way. They're doing great things with FirstNet. Here's some of the gaps. I won't read them off. Again, they're primarily IT related. We also got tired of the COML not being invited to the party of the planning meeting. That's why we want to be a section. A lot of people still don't consider communication all that important until they don't have it. We're going to change that. I don't need to go through this. We've already talked about it. Also, in regards to why we need the new technology, is that we go out to various large cities, very large city event. I guess Cincinnati has the Big Bang fireworks display, something like that. Columbus, okay. Yeah. We go out there and we actually observe what kind of communications they use. Social networking, Facebook, all that good stuff. Who said that? And here it is.
I said, what are you?
That's rather loud. IT service management is going to be the next thing we tackle. Here are the various subgroups underneath it. A lot of IT classes. Bandwidth management, system administration, cybersecurity. That's another thing that's pushing its head farther and farther down the road. And this is the notional communication section of the future. This is the way they're going to ask for it. Now, in the lower left, you see the three lower blocks on the lower left where it says Oxcom. Right now, it has a dotted line. Assuming this notion gets approved by the National Integration Center, like we hope, that dotted line will go away and become solid. And then amateur radio is officially on the block. I'm sorry?
Your points to the dotted lines on your screen.
Oh, you can't see the dotted line there? I got a toy here. That's the one we want to change solid. There's the information technology section right here. Our good friend, the COML. Here are the requirements for the ITSL section lead. And I don't think that's all of it. That's just the start of it. The people that put this course together, they didn't take no prisoners. They want some serious expertise out in the field, as you can tell by these requests. Now, my job, once the experts, Carla and SafeCom, get done with the prerequisites, then they hand it off to me because I'm the cop. I get to make sure that people meet the prerequisites before they're given the certificate. Mina, the lady named Jolene Hollingshead out of San Diego. This is the data D, which will be in conjunction with the planning P. Here's my contact information. There is always something going on at OEC. Lately, a lot of it has to do with the new courses for people in the field, new positions for people in the field, and new considerations for emergency communications out at the state level. I've had the honor of working with Oscar this week. I've learned a great deal from what he's gone through. A lot of that information is going back to DC with me. Excuse me. And we'll be talking with him as well as our good friend Ross Merlin. Ross, stand up. Mr. Nifog. Also Mr. Shares, Mr. Mars, he's a mister of many things. Ross and I have known each other for a long time. This is a time we're going to get done way ahead of time. If I could get Oscar and Carla to come up here, please. Now would be the time to ask us anything you desire in regards to this briefing, or maybe it's not in regards to this briefing. So, yes, sir.
Randy, for the people that have completed Carmel County Oxcom either last year or many years ago, how do we stay fresh? As an example, we hear of firefighters out west that died because the Carmel made a mistake issuing the county, made a mistake issuing radios. How do we learn those lessons learned besides coming to date? Is there a website we can go to look at perhaps a sanitized version of that making the same mistake?
There's always an after-action report after those events. Everybody likes to blame communications, first of all, but once you get to know the details, it really wasn't. Not in most cases, anyway. As far as keeping refreshed, the word will go out through FEMA and OEC what they feel together should be kept up to speed as far as your knowledge, as far as your education. Those after-action reports, at some point, they're going to come out. They do have best practices. They'll tell you in general what went wrong and what the fix will be. And those are going, I believe those are on the SafeCom website, right? No one seems to know. I pretty much, SafeCom website.gov or .com? If you look up DHS SafeCom, they have all kinds of resources on there to include after-action reports. They have a copy of the position task books for each of those, ComL, ComT. There'll be a position task book being looked at right now by many states for Oxcom. So things are moving at the speed of the federal government right now, but we are improving things. And we try to get the information out. We don't like to hold on to something that may have gone bad or hold on to it. We don't want to do that. I mean, we want to get the information out. Now, it doesn't always seem that way, but I assure you, as far as the OEC, Carla goes, I can speak for him, and knowing Oscar, that we try to be as honest as possible, because sooner or later, if we don't, it's going to come back to bite us.
I'm on the communications section task force, and that is one of the things we actually talked about this week is how do you do a refresher course for ComL? And so that is something that is on our radar to start developing, especially, we're just coming into a refresh cycle on the curriculum in general. So looking at ways to do online training for refreshers so that you don't have to go sit in a 5-day class again. You just need to know what's changed or what's new or what the new philosophies are. So that is something definitely on our radar.
Yes, sir.
John, have they figured out what the prerequisites are going to be for the D section?
No, not 100%. They have an idea. For the ITSL position, which we talked about during the alpha and beta courses, they're going to be talking with the people that are, the observers are really evaluators. We're going to go in and they're going to dissect the class as it happens to say who should really be sitting in on this course, who should be teaching this course. They have a good idea, but until we get done with the alpha beta courses, we won't know for sure. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
metric, both for the people who take the course, what we specifically require them to be able to do at the end of the course, and then also a specific metric to define how you all are doing your job. In other words, how do we know that you all are accomplishing what is set out either by legislation or by something?
That is also something we talked about extensively this week. Kind of doesn't really say much. It's like, hey, we've taught 5,000 people this particular class. What have they done with it? How many are still active? So we did spend probably 3 hours talking about metrics and how to get the information of how useful and how relevant the classes are. So once again, just kind of hang on for a little bit. That is definitely something we spend a lot of time on. So we're going to be looking at those exact types of things.
As far as how we're doing our job, I have about 60 evaluators looking at me at any given time. Each of the state SWCs are evaluating the course content, how it is delivered, any logistical or administrative support that's involved with it. If they don't like it, they make a phone call to the Admiral, which is the head of OEC. So we know real quick when somebody's not happy. And we're always, can you imagine the personalities involved with 60 different evaluators? They're all interesting. We are being graded almost every single day. Yes, sir. Apologize for that. We usually let the ACM of that particular area decide on how best to do what they need to do. And the reason being is that every single state is different in their requirements. In some states, every single county is different. So we don't tell an ACM how to do their job. We tell them what their job should be. And of course, that's going to get morphed depending on the event and other managers that are around them. We don't tell them how. We just tell, in general, this is what an ACM does.
That's what we assume.
Right.
We have access to some of those slides, like the IT requirements that you were going to have there, the knowledge.
If you send me an email, sir, and ask for that, I'll send it to you.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Send an email in care of John Peterson to that email address and ask for those slides, and I'll be more than happy to send them to you. Anybody else for Carla or for Oscar? Yes, sir.
You know what? First of all, I have to say thank you for the American Radio Relay League for the support that we got, and I want to be sure about that. Second, the American Red Cross that gave us a great support and unbelievable. I don't know how it happens in other jurisdictions, but in ours was fantastic. There are things to improve, and that's another presentation. We are teaching the RS members how to deal with the data, how to deal with the voice again. It's not, and this is actually ham radio operation with the NBIS antennas. And also if they have to go and talk with the data gateways across 1,000 miles. Remember I told you this is the best field day ever you can have. Either you survive by yourself, and I forgot to say you that even for the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA response was taking 9 days by plane to get something that they need tomorrow. So to make things different, every situation is different. But I do have to tell you the following. I will do my best. I will put my best, my heart on it. And again, the Force of 50, they were really great people. The team lead that we selected and we worked together was amazing. And you have to talk to them and you will get their inputs directly from them. Sending that email that I showed there, which is a much longer email than that, but you got the sense. Well, what to make difference? Be prepared. And this is what I'm trying to do in the class, and I have a special presentation that was much longer than this one, talking about things that they can be even called sensitive information, but responders need to know. Be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. And to be playing together as a team, new teammates across different states, you may need them because you never know when the next event is going to happen and what kind of event is going to happen. Yes, sir.
Oscar, I hope you, I was with the Sheriff's 10 team, and I want to publicly thank the hams in Puerto Rico. When they brought their repeaters back up, both us and the Red Cross used those systems, and they may be on there, and when we got on, they got away and let us take priority on those repeaters and those frequencies. So hats off to the hams that worked extra hard in Puerto Rico to get their systems back.
Let me tell you something that, going in the same line of Dave, can you imagine having a zero interference in the HF bands or repeaters? No interference at all, just business, pure business. Everybody took things very seriously. And I think this is when we have to be united. And it doesn't matter if you're from Dayton or you're from North Carolina or Texas or California. We have to work together. I think that's the most important part. And we will be successful. Does this event has a solution? I bet you it doesn't have a solution. Not enough resources, not enough personnel, many things to attend, but we have to put priorities. That's the way it works. Thank you.
Well, we thank you for your time. If you have any questions, you'd like to come up to us afterwards, feel free. Thank you very much for attending.